Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good day, everyone. I am going to talk today about the research methods in English language teaching, and the focus for this lesson is we're going to talk about qualitative research. And in this course, I am your lecturer, Dr. Maulina, Assistant Professor from Department of English Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah Kendari. This course is taught for distance learning, a program of distance learning, pembelajaran jarak jauh. Now, here is the instructional objective. So, the objective or what we are going to have after learning this course of the qualitative research. So, after you study this course, you're going to be able to identify different types of qualitative research and compare and contrast them. The second one is you're going to define phenomenology. So these kinds of qualitative research is in this course I provide 8 types of the qualitative research methods. It is you're going to define the phenomenology, a narrative. The third one is case study. Next is ethnography, content or document analysis, and then interpretive, historical, and the last one is grounded theory. And the last objectives of the lesson is that you will be able to explain, also give examples and how it can be used. The methods in the English language teaching research. So those three things of the instructional objectives of our lesson. So here in the pictures, as I mentioned, there are 8 types of the qualitative research methods. The first one, we're going to talk about phenomenology. So here we are going to talk about phenomenology, and we're going to have a look at what actually phenomenology study is. So phenomenology is designed to describe, also interpret and experience. So by determining the meaning of the experience as perceived by the people who have participated in it. For example, we are going to ask a question like, what is the experience of an activity or concept from the perspective of particular participants in the English language teaching? That's actually the key questions of the phenomenology. So I repeat, the key questions of the phenomenology study is that what is the experience of an activity or concept from the perspective of particular participants? As it's like based on the its key function, key questions of this kind of study of phenomenological research. Here, I also addresses some important things. That is that uh, actually in the process of the phenomenological research, the researcher must first identify a problem. So actually, it's just like all of the kind of research method. First of all, we have to identify a research problem. What's actually we're going to have a look, or what actually we're going to investigate or measure or identify or so on. And the next one is that uh, in this phenomenological research, the participants are chosen because they have been through the experience being investigated and can share their thoughts and feelings about it. So, as you remember, the key questions of this phenomenology, as I mentioned twice just before, and it usually we use interview as the secondary tool to get the information and to answer the questions. And more things about the phenomenology research is that Uh, Phenomenology is actually uh, it's a one thing that is considered is usually also commonly used in the English language teaching since in 1994 and 19 yes in 1994 by most of us. So it's been a long way of having this one of the research methods in the English language teaching, and this method is also a common one and interesting one when you want to have a look at um, the key things that you're gonna uh, search in the phenomenology. Remember that one thing I repeat, the key question in the phenomenology is that what is the experience of an activity or a concept form the perspective of particular participants. That's why the researcher in choosing the participants or the subject of the study is that they who have been experiencing the things. So um, the participant can give such amazing informations to support and to gain rich and in-depth data. So that's about phenomenology. So actually the phenomenology explanations or more explanation you can have a look at in the references as later on I would attach provide the references so you can have a look at there in a page 471 to 474 in the educational research by area tool. So everyone, I guess that's for phenomenology, and we're going to have a look at what's actually a narrative, the second one or the second type of research, a qualitative research a method that is a narrative. So narrative actually research has its roots like in different humanities disciplines and focuses on stories. So actually these uh, types of research methods in the qualitative it focuses on stories both for spoken or written, and it is to restoring or to retelling someone's life's experiences. So that is the keywords of the narrative research is that restoring the someone's life's experience. For instance, in the English language teaching, it's restoring why the the teacher or the educator is successful in teaching, or restoring that good language learner why they are successful in learning and achieve their goals and achieve their dreams in their lives or in their career or in education field. So like phenomenology, as I mentioned before, the key questions uh, that is the key question to search or to investigate uh, the the problems is that in this narrative the key question is what is the story and its meaning as told through this person's experience. So it tells or it's you're going to have a look at what is the story about, what is the story about, yeah, from the person's experience. So you can have a look at the differences of the key questions looking for in each on each types of research qualitative research methods. So as I mentioned in the narrative one, so there are two things that can be restoring both in the spoken one or in the written one. So actually the researcher seeks to understand the life experience of an individual or a small group. As a previous meeting, we have a look at the explanations of brief explanations of the qualitative. That is, it uses a small small scale samples or group of participants. The next one is that in the narrative research provides accounts of human experiences. So by collecting and analyzing stories about life. So the key points is about life's experience. This story. Okay. And then the narrative research evolved from diverse disciplines in the humanities such as literature, art, and film, as well as from disciplines such as psychology and sociology, and of course in education. So the next thing you have to consider is that in the narrative studies that narrative studies use documents and other sources of personal information. So it's not a direct utterance of the persons, and then you directly transferred it into the your writing interpretations. But then the narrative studies use documents and other sources of personal information. Okay, and that is to illuminate the person's life. For example, in a story format, and like in educational trends in terms of promoting teacher self-reflection. That's the example. And actually the emphasis on giving teachers voice have been influencing narrative research also. That's one example. Okay, so you have to find out the key point, the keywords of each types of the research in the qualitative research. So the last one for narrative is that narrative actually important. So important in English language teaching. Okay, so important. Why? Because actually, according to some scholars, so I provide also crystals. After you have a look at the book from Ari et al, you have can see the crystals book. So in restoring the people's life or the person's life, you have to consider like, is the story authentic? Okay, is the story real? Okay, and then who owns actually the story? And the next one is, does the researcher have permission to share the story? So you have in narrative, it is storing someone's life experience. You have to ask for the consent. Okay, the consent or permission from the individuals who you are going to uh, tell or restoring their life. Okay, and then that's actually the things that you have to consider. Okay, so now we are going to have a look at uh, another uh, the third one, the third types of the qualitative research methods, that is case study. Yeah, so case study. So as you see in the slides there, case study is actually focusing on a single unit to produce an in-depth description that is rich and holistic. So in-depth and single unit. So in-depth and single unit. Actually, in this part of the type of the qualitative research, the key question that is usually uh, used to answer a question is that, like the previous one, phenomenology and narrative, they have their own key questions to as the sign that this one is questions for each these types of research. For case study, so the key questions that underlying a research of in these types of research is that what are the characteristics of the particular entity, phenomenon, or person or setting. So it is going to investigate the characteristics, the particular entity of phenomenon or person or setting. So in the case studies, typically actually include multiple sources of data collected over time. So it's flexible and it collects some multiple sources. So as I mentioned, it actually focuses on a single unit of a thing, like to answer or to see the characteristic of a particular entity, phenomenon, or person, or something, or setting. Yeah. So uh, in the case study, the unit of analysis actually determines whether the study is a case study or a different form of qualitative study research. So in the case studies, can answer descriptive questions. What happened? So actually, that's a key questions. Key questions to for this case study. Like, so what happened? Or attempt to explain why something happened by looking at the process. So what happened or why something happened by looking at the process. Okay, so they are particular heuristic focus on a particular phenomenon. What happened, why this phenomenon happened, or particular situation, what happened to this situation, and why this situation happened. Okay, and in it is in the descriptive form that is providing as an end result of a thick, so as in the slide you see there in that, so a thick rich description and heuristic. Yeah, rich description and heuristic, and focus on providing new insights. So in the case study, the researcher actually believes that something can be learned uh, in specific way. So what happened and why this thing happened. So that's actually the key things that is going. You have to think about that. So the next things in the case, actually in the case study is that uh, actually case study has its own types. So it has three types of the case studies. The first one is intrinsic case study. The next one is instrumental case study. And the last one is multiple or collective case study. Okay, so let me give you a brief explanations about what actually intrinsic case study. So actually, intrinsic case study is conducted to understand a particular case, so that may be unusual, unique, or different some way. So intrinsic. And in the second one, instrumental case study. So here the researcher, you later, if you choose, consider this types of research method is suits your research objectives, then you have to select the case because actually it represents some other issue under investigation, and you believe that this particular case can help you provide insights to help understand that issue. And the last types of the case study is that multiple or collective case study. As it says multiple means it uses several cases or several phenomena, several events, several situations to identify what happened, why that things happen. Okay, so I hope that three types of the first three types of the qualitative research is understandable, even it's a brief. Later on, you can have a look at in the book. So I provide the what the page number and also some searching. Next, Here, the fourth one, we're going to have a look at the content or document analysis. So as you see in the screen on the screen, content and or document analysis is that the research method applied to written or visual. So different from case study. So case study is written or um, no, the narrative is written and spoken one to restoring someone's life. Case study is to have a deep in search of what happened and why that things happen. So content and or document analysis is a research method applied to written or visual materials for the purpose of identifying specified characteristics of the material. So researcher in this choosing applying implementing this method research method is having the analysis in terms of documents like a textbook, newspapers, web pages, speeches, television programs, advertisements, musical compositions, or any of a host of other types of documents. Okay, and one thing that you have to consider or think, uh, believe that content analysis is actually widely used in education. Okay, so it's widely used in education. For example, analyzing the textbook of English textbook used in junior high school or even senior high school or even for university, a college textbook. Okay, and the things that you have to know in the content analysis or document analysis that in terms of the education or English language teaching, actually it has the purposes like to identify bias, prejudice, or propaganda in the textbook. For example, a researcher might analyze high school history texts in a particular school, like I mentioned before. And the next purpose is that to analyze types of errors in students' writing. So if you are interested in analyzing types of error in students analyzing, so you are applying the content or document analysis. Okay, so analyze types of error in students and writing. For example, you could look at students written work to classify spellings or grammatical errors and their nature and frequency. So you are actually using or applying the content analysis or document analysis. The third purpose of the content analysis or the content one is that to describe prevailing practices. For example, let me give you example. Uh, you could identify the entrance requirements. Okay, identify the entrance of uh, uh, requirements in the for universities. For example, you analyze the bulletins of the universities. The next one is yes, another one of the purpose of the content analysis is to discover the level of difficulty of material in textbook or other publications. For example, you could ask what is the vocabulary level of the fourth grade social study textbook in a university, Universitas Muhammadiyah Kendari, for instance, yeah. And the last one is to discover the relative importance of or interest in certain topics. For example, you might analyze popular educational research textbook to see the coverage given the qualitative research and changes in the coverage over time. So that's actually 5 points of the purposes of content analysis. Okay, that's the content analysis and more explanations you can have a look at in that pages, range pages 457 to 459. And the next one is um, interpretive. Okay, interpretive. Interpretive actually, in the book of Airy et al., you couldn't find the explanations, but here actually I would give you a little brief of the what's actually interpretive research. So interpretive research is a research paradigm that is researching social reality. Most of the interpretive research are in a yes, for social life, social reality. What happened to a social interaction, for instance? Yeah, that's interpretive, and it's quite rare in the use of this. I mean, the use of this kind of research method in education, especially in Indonesia. Yeah, yeah. So you may have a consideration and think about which one actually popular among these eight types of qualitative research. Anyway, we are going to have a look at the next one. So historical studies. It is quite different with their narrative. Yeah, narrative. So okay, so historical studies is the attempt to establish facts and arrive at conclusion concerning the past. Yeah. So it is about attempting to establish the fact of the past. Yeah. So historical research is actually included the in the qualitative research. Why? Because actually its emphasis on interpretation and its use of non-numeric data. As I mentioned in previous meeting, that qualitative research is about dealing with the non-numeric data. Okay, so the historian, like people or researcher who are telling or who are researching something happened in the past, for instance, is that systematically locates, evaluates, and interprets evidence. So what is established is that evidence concerning the past. Okay, yeah, evidence from which people can learn about the past. Yeah. So based actually on the evidence gathered, conclusion are drawn regarding the past so as to increase knowledge of how and why past events occur and the process which the past became the present. Yeah. So that's actually a brief things of the historical. Next, here is the last one of the qualitative research I provide for this meeting. Actually, there are more some, but we focus on these eight one. So the last one is that grounded theory. Grounded theory actually has been very popular in education as well. Um, here in education, like in English language teaching. So grounded theory has its roots in sociology, even its roots in sociology like interpretive, but actually they also use for educational purposes like English language teaching. And the goal of the grounded theory or this type of the research method is to inductively build a theory about a practice or phenomenon using interviews and observation, the primary data collection tools. Yeah. And these types of method, research qualitative research methods, been found by Glaser and Strauss in 1967. I remember it recalls me about the lesson that's been experienced and been implementing these types of research by a professor, my professor, when I was in a master degree, also in a postgraduate. Last time he used this method, grounded theory, to identify uh, the good language learning experiences in learning English. Okay, so that's a very brief. Okay, for the grounded theory, very brief. And actually, before I close for the explanations of these eight uh, types of qualitative research methods, in the grounded theory, the data are actually collected, analyzed systematically. So data are analyzed by using open coding and actual coding, also selective coding. So three ways of coding for use in a grounded theories. So open coding, axial coding, and selective coding. Okay. And next things. So that's all the thing that I could share for this moment. That in this course, as this distance learning, you're gonna have an individual presentation, actually independent individual presentation. As I mentioned in the instructional objectives, there are four things that you have to comprehend, have to know, or you have to understand after learning this one. But to sharpen your knowledge after you hear my explanation, you're going to, in your individual presentation, you're going to identify, define, and explain the in your own words the the eight types of the qualitative research method just now I mentioned or I explained, and give some examples in terms of or dealing with the examples in English language teaching. So here actually the picture, you can attach your own picture here. The picture you can attach there. You write down your name here. So everyone has the responsibility to uh, talk about each type of the qualitative research method, like phenomenology, narrative, case study, and then the next one is ethnography, content, historical, and oh yes, ground theory, interpretive, and one more thing is here you have to yeah, in ethnography, one more thing, ethnography. I guess I missed that one. So you can have a look at the explanations or the further readings from these three books: Eri, Jacobs, Sorensen, and Razavir. 2010 Introduction to Research in Education, 8th edition. And then the book by Kressels too in 2012 and 2009, Education Research, Planning, Conducting and Evaluating Qualitative and Quantitative Research. Also a research design for qualitative, quantitative and mixed method. But you have to focus on the qualitative because uh, you have to sharpen, you have to enrich your knowledge more in reading this after you hear my or you listen my explanation. So I guess that's all from me. One thing that before I close is that learning by doing is challenging and enjoyable. So challenge yourself to uh, get more chances to improve your skills. So that's all from me. Thank you so much. I would like to see you next week. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hope you are staying healthy, staying safe. Bye bye. Thank you.